Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Well, let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from 71s who says, am I the butthole for telling my brother the truth on why I don't ask him for anything? I, 19 female, have 3 brothers, 27, 28 and 32. My oldest brother Dave got married to Sarah in May. I study halfway across the world from my hometown, where my family are. I got really sick a few months ago and rushed to the nearest hospital. Turns out they don't accept my insurance and I had to pay out of pocket. I was €50 short and called everyone I could, but no one was picking up. I then called my oldest brother, Dave, because he always picks up, and asked him to send me €50 and I would send it back once I get paid in a few days. He told me not to be ridiculous and he didn't need me to pay him back €50. Sarah called me that night and asked how I was doing. After the chit chat, she asked me if I could ask someone else next time I needed money because my brother is a married man. I was shocked, but I apologized and said I offered to pay him back. She said it's fine, but next time I should plan my finances in advance so I won't have to rely on a married man. It's my birthday soon and Dave called to ask what I wanted. I said nothing and that I was fine, but I appreciated him asking. My other brother called to ask what I want, and I said I wanted some money to heat my apartment. I couldn't afford to heat it this month. He was baffled I was so broke. I couldn't afford heating and I wasn't saying anything. He started tearing up on the phone call with me and ended the call and sent me $500 later. I guess he told Dave about the call with me because Dave called me and started interrogating me why I just told him I didn't need anything, and then asked my youngest brother. He sounded offended and asked why I feel like I can't rely on him. I asked, haven't you spoken to Sarah about this? He was confused on what I meant, and I told him about the conversation I had with Sarah after he sent me the €50 for the hospital. He said he'd call me back, but he hasn't. A cousin of mine sent me a message a few hours ago saying I was a B for meddling in their marriage and that Dave didn't owe me anything. I was like, what? When did I say Dave owed me anything? I never relied on him for anything, nor do I plan on it. I mean, I feel bad that Dave and Sarah are fighting. I can't help but feel weirded out that Sarah did that behind his back and he had no clue. I've been extremely anxious and I can't stop shaking. Am I the butthole? Now, for this, I'm going to put myself in the brother's position, and this happened to me. My partner, blocked one of my siblings from reaching out to help from me, and I would be absolutely furious about that. Imagine finding out that your younger brother, sister, whichever family member it is in need, and your partner told them not to reach out to you. That's devastating, and it would really give me a lot of questions in my head going forward. Obviously, the biggest question is why? Is it just a control thing? But yeah, I think serious questions need to be asked here. But Total Marmalade says, wow, not the butthole. Sarah needs to think about why she feels threatened by her husband helping out his sister. Brown Sugar Bear replies that and says, the weirdness of Sarah saying he's a married man is sticking with me. Your siblings don't cease to exist when you get married. What does that even mean? I'd also be telling the cousin to F right off and quit meddling in family issues that have nothing to do with them. Sourceless Assumption says, not the butthole. Your sister-in-law might soon become, it says future sister-in-law, unless that means something else, but I'm assuming it means ex-sister-in-law. If any one of my siblings needed my help and my SO told them to not ask me for money or help, I'd seriously be reconsidering any connection with that person, especially if I'm not struggling myself. The audacity that Sarah had to tell you not to ask for money instead of talking to your brother is insane. That in itself is insulting and condescending. Opie responds and says, to be honest, at first, I thought maybe Sarah did that because my brother might be struggling financially. They had a very lavish wedding, so maybe that took a big hit to his finances and he was too proud to say anything. But no. A few weeks after the call I had with her, she was posting the gifts he brought back for her from his business trip, and there was nothing remotely cheap in that pile. They also travel a lot together, so he's definitely not struggling. He had my other 2 brothers offer to pay for my entire university tuition when I was applying to university. He and my other two brothers offered to pay my entire university tuition when I was applying to universities, but I grew up thinking I was a burden and I still struggle with that. I lied to my family that I got a full scholarship. To be fair, it's a 25% scholarship, so definitely better than nothing, but I'm paying for my tuition myself. I wonder how she'd react if he was paying for my university tuition, if she was acting like that over 50 euros. Married Life responds to that and says you need to stop deceiving your brothers. Understand that you don't have to accept their gifts or aid, but not being honest with them about your situation will probably make them feel like you don't like them or trust them. This is what has happened already. You need to start today by being open and honest with them about everything. Write them an email and tell them how you felt and your concerns and tell them you love them. OP responds again and says my brothers and I are very close. I tell them everything except my struggles. Our dad died when I was really young and they've been bending over backwards for me since then. I felt terrible at how much they had to do for me. We call each other all the time and they're my best friends, but I don't want to feel like a burden again. I'm working on it, truly, but it's not easy. I want to cry my eyes out just thinking of them worrying about me. Admitting that I wanted money for heating is the most I've admitted about my struggles in years, so hopefully that's the start of me being honest with them. I'm also worried they won't take my word for it when I say I'm okay again. Martin says, not the butthole, and I would steer clear of Sarah. She clearly has some sort of complex that is making her want to establish a boundary between you and your older brother. She's probably thinking you were trying to separate them by being dependent on him. Obviously, she also has gaslit your family into thinking that he owed you and involved your cousin in this. You and your older brother need to sit down and talk with Sarah because if you leave her unchecked, she will take more out of context and twist it so she is the victim and further separate you and your siblings from him. And one more comment from Silent Counter 6750 who says, not the butthole. Your sister-in-law is, however. Being a married man doesn't mean cut off from the rest of the family, but she didn't get the memo. Sarah has shown her colors, controlling, isolating, and conniving colors. Inform the cousin that they need to mind their own business. You now know Sarah and the cousins are no allies of yours. Keep in touch with your brothers, ignore Sarah. For all you know, she's put her marriage to your brother on thin ice. And before we go on to that update, I agree with a lot of those comments that you need to communicate with your siblings. You know, you say you got a loving relationship with them and it sounds much like my brothers. I'm the youngest sibling in mine and they're all 10 plus years older than me. Yes, I was a late child. And I know for an absolute fact, if I was to pick up the phone and say to any of my brothers that I was struggling with anything, they would drop everything to come and help me. And I would do the same for them as well. But OP goes on to update their post, which says, again, I hope this reaches some of you, lol. So my middle brother called me yesterday and asked me to explain what's been going on, and I did. He's always had quite the temper and got very angry about the Sarah situation. He mentioned how Dave is paying the rent for Sarah's 22-year-old brother's apartment. So for Sarah to ask me to not ask Dave for anything at all was so messed up when her own brother is getting his rent paid every single month by Dave. To be honest, this made me mad. It's okay for Dave to support her brother, but God forbid he sends me 50 euros for an emergency, right? Anyway, Dave called me and we had a heart-to-heart conversation. I explained to him what I've been going through here and he was silent for a while. I did mention that if I was in urgent need of something, I still had my other two brothers to ask, so it really wasn't that terrible. He said he feels so guilty that I was suffering and he didn't know. He said he won't tell me the details about his discussion with his wife, but he was heartbroken that she would even think of telling me not to rely on him. And he asked her to give me an apology, which she said she did. But at the time of the call, I hadn't received anything. I said I haven't gotten an apology from her, and he told me to check my messages again. Still nothing. He was silent for a while and just sighed. I also mentioned the text my cousin sent, which he asked me to forward to him. He said he felt so bad that people much older than me were treating me like this and he will deal with it so it never happens again. That was this morning. I got a message from Sarah 10 minutes ago. Not sure how that's meant to be an apology, but to summarize, she said, I'm sorry if you took what I said as you can't rely on your brother. He's your brother and I would never intentionally try to make you feel like he couldn't do anything for you. I'm also hurt that you couldn't speak to me if you had a problem with it. We could have solved this as sisters. Now, what the hell am I meant to say to that? I know she'll make me the villain if I don't respond, but honestly, what on earth is that? And people encouraged OP to forward everything to the brother, and OP updated in the comments and said this in another comment, but I copy and paste it here. Thank you so much. I've sent him a screenshot of her apology and sent a voice note explaining that I felt like she was just trying to gaslight me into thinking she didn't say I can't rely on him, and I must have understood it wrong. I also sent him a screenshot from the day that call happened in August, of me telling my best friend what Sarah had said, just to show him I'm not changing up the story. He said to not respond to her and apologized 1,000 times over again for her behavior. I also noticed that she took me off her Instagram. All I can do is laugh at this point. People were also talking about the brothers in the comments, and OP said, my brothers said they would take turns sending me an allowance every month, whether I like it or not, so they didn't give me much of an option. I wouldn't have declined this time, to be honest, because I'm really struggling. I regret how much strain I put on myself when my brothers were more than willing to help. Definitely not doing that again. And that was definitely a non-apology at the end there, which we've seen multiple times. You know, one of those, I'm sorry that you took it that way. You know, this is your fault kind of thing. And I'll certainly keep an eye out for more updates on this one in the future. I definitely don't think that's the end of that, especially the way the sister's acting in this. With OP hopefully being more honest with her siblings, I think things can potentially only escalate, you know, as more things come out, sister starts to react more to OP. I think brother will start getting more fed up with that kind of behavior. But what do you guys make of this situation? Do you think this one is concluded or not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Cry Creative 1721, who says, am I the butthole for inserting myself into a married couple's financial life? I'm friends with a married couple, Grace and Michael. Grace and I went out to drink a few days ago, just the two of us. We talked about inflation, finances, and she confessed to me that she barely has any money, and it makes her feel really vulnerable. Turns out they mostly live off her income, and Michael, who makes over 2.5 times as much as Grace, puts almost all of his income into savings. He also asked Grace to transfer any of her bonuses or extra money into that savings account. The problem is that Grace has no access to that account. She told me she asked for it in the past, but Michael just said she already has access to their shared checking account. That is strictly for their monthly expenses, so it's fine. Grace told me that she feels like she should have access to that account too, or at least have a little extra in her own personal account, so if anything happens to Michael, she doesn't have to wait months to access the money. She told this to Michael too, but he dismissed her and said nothing will happen to him. I told Grace that this is really not okay, and she should demand access to that account. It's her money too, and it's not right that only Michael has access to it. I was very strong about this and made her promise that she will make Michael give access to her. She seemed very relieved that I agree with her and find her concerns more than reasonable. Now on to the problem. Currently, Michael is throwing a fit at me for inserting myself into their financial life, saying it's none of my business. He says that over 85% of the money was put into the savings account by him. Whatever Grace put in there was just to compensate for the things Michael paid for alone in the past. Yes, he is right that it's none of my business, but my close friend came to me saying she feels vulnerable because at 30 years old, she only has about 500 euros in her name, despite having a well-paying job. Of course, I will tell her this isn't right and encourage her to stand up for herself, but since I'm friends with Michael too, I don't know. Am I the butthole? Now the title on this one, as I was coming into it, I think, ooh, this one could go either way here, but absolutely not the butthole in this situation. This is financial abuse. All you did in this is sat down with a friend and said, you know, this ain't right. You gave her good advice that the situation she's in is not right. And when he said that, you know, 85% of the money was put into the savings account by him, and, you know, whatever Grace put in there was just to compensate for the things he paid for alone in the past. So he's basically saying none of that money is going to be hers anyway. That's a super worrying one to me. And, you know, you're definitely not the butthole for giving that advice. But Evocative Enigma says, not the butthole. You are warning a friend that it sounds like she's a victim of financial abuse. He's demanding all her pay be shared while sharing none of his. He's trying to make sure he has no funds to which she can use to separate their lives and he can claim all the money as his. She needed a huge wake-up call, and he's just mad you've shown her his true colors. Bar opening says this is financial abuse. He is controlling his wife and an all-around butthole. Please warn your friend. He's peed about being called out. Besides, she came to you asking for your opinion, and that makes you clearly not the butthole. Michi says Grace is being manipulated and financially abused. Not only does he barely contribute to the household, he actively encourages her to put her own money into accounts she doesn't have access to. Do not back off. Michael may be your friend, but he's being a huge a-hole. Grace needs your help, not the butthole. And one more comment from Harley Business who says, not the butthole. Right is right, and your relationship with either/both has no bearing on the issue. The assets of the marriage belong to both parties equally. Assets each party held before the marriage is personal, not community property. That may not be in some countries. Grace should have unfettered access to family assets. If husband won't put family funds into a joint account, then in my opinion, Grace should hire an attorney and force him to do it. And now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from EMF928 who says, am I the butthole for doing a background check on my boyfriend? My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 months. Even though it's early days, I really thought he was the one. He is nice, attentive, funny, and attractive, and I'm getting older and I thought he must be the one I have kids with and settle down with. But he doesn't drive, which is very strange in my city. The public transportation is really bad and most people would opt for a car over an apartment because at least they would be able to get around. Only people who work from home or were in poverty wouldn't have a car. And he makes good money and works 15 minutes away from where he lives by car, so it made no sense. He shows up at dates by asking his friends for rides or asking me to pick him up. We live close by, so I didn't mind, but I asked him about it and he said cars are expensive and he didn't want to pay for one. But then he has trouble getting around and complains how expensive Ubers are. One day I found out my state has a website of public crimes and decided to put in his name. A wall of offences came up and it matched his first, middle and last name as well as his year of birth. He has 5 DUIs and a court date for a pending one in a week. The DUIs range in date from 10 years ago to one he got 6 months ago. That's the one he is set to go to court for. Because his name isn't super uncommon, I decided to see if he takes the day off work because it's in the morning. He does take that day off and says he has a doctor's appointment. I confront him when I came over that evening and he got angry at me for not trusting him and infiltrating his personal life like this. I'm pissed he lied to me and he says he doesn't have to tell me everything and he's changed. I told him his last DUI was 6 months ago, so how has he changed? He got mad and said the cops were pinning things on him and he just had alcohol with him and he didn't actually drink. I could believe that for 1 DUI, but he has 5. I asked him to show me proof and he said he doesn't have to, and if I was a good girlfriend, I would trust him. I don't because he lied to me already, but am I the butthole for doing a background check on him on why he didn't drive? But we're going to go straight to the comments and start with Art who says, not the butthole. Committing crimes that put other people's lives at risk isn't your personal life. Just dump him now. Dude can't even take responsibility for something he's been arrested for 5 times. Avia says, not the butthole. Multiple DUIs can indicate a lot of things. And besides that, I honestly think more people should do a background check on their SO. It could have been a lot worse than a DUI with no casualties. He wasn't honest about it and got angry when you found out. Might want to reevaluate if this is the guy for you. Mean Crochet Hook says, not the butthole. Seems like you've had a narrow escape. If he had really changed, he would have admitted that he had a problem when you asked him about not having a car. Not to mention, he would have at least taken ownership of his problem and not tried, the cops are trying to pin stuff on me. Be thankful you found this out early on. Birch says, if you live in a state like mine, then most court information is public information held on a public website. He got angry at you for going into his personal life. That information is not private. Anyone can see it. With 5 past DUIs and 1 pending, I doubt that he has learned his lesson. You are not the butthole for looking him up on a court database. I looked up pretty much everyone I went to high school with online for fun, and would definitely do it for someone in a more intimate relationship. If it was a paid background check service, I might feel differently, but it is still imaginable in a marriage situation. And one more comment from the Wookala, who says, not the butthole. Look, it would be one thing if he didn't want to advertise to a new relationship that he had these DUIs hanging over him. Plenty of otherwise decent folks may have had things in their history that they aren't proud of, but he really needed to own up to it when you started asking, and it's totally unsurprising that you would have looked into his background when you've only known him for a few months. He had the opportunity to come clean when you came to him with what you found, but he instead chose to become accusatory towards you, and couldn't accept responsibility for his own actions to boot. You mentioned that you are getting older. Not sure what that means for you, but assuming that your boyfriend is also in your age range, I feel like it's safe to say that this guy has missed a lot of opportunities to grow up along the way. It doesn't seem like he's planning to grow up anytime soon. You didn't ask about this, but I'll answer like you did. Yes, you should probably dump the guy. Not for the background so much as for the way he's handling the revelation. You can do better. And the comments pretty much just continued along that path. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories, for your love, your support, and the time you take out of your day to spend with the channel and get involved. It's absolutely incredible. And I know I say it all the time, but I really do mean it. I always think of it. I sit here sometimes and I'm just like, sit back in my chair and I think, bloody hell. That's all I think. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love. I'm a weird guy.